Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy end of the work week. Hope that y'all have had a pleasant week. We are here for the Astro-Babble, ready with 5 more charts to read, to explain, to explore, to share what the stars have to say for these lovely individuals who have donated their charts to science. So as always, if you would like to be a part of the live streams, you can always private message me your birth date, birthplace, exact birth time. That's what I need to run a proper chart. And we will add you to the list, and I'll message you when your chart is featured. And likewise, if you would like to work one-on-one, if you would like to learn astrology as well, you can always go to my website, scorpiorisingastrology.com, where I have consultations available, as well as recorded online classes that you can start studying the stars and watching the stars with me. Hooray! Okay, so let's go ahead and get to it, shall we? Oh goodness, I forgot to reopen them. Well, that's fun. We need to go to live stream charts. Today is, just to give you an idea, I know my screen is sharing on Facebook right now. Like, seriously, these are how many of the charts that, this is just since I started saving them, like, so many files. Okay. We'll just put them in order. Boop, boop. Okay. So, first and foremost, we're going to start off with Amanda. Good morning, Amanda. How are you? Okay. So let's take a peek at Amanda's chart. Oh, happy birthday, Amanda. Oh, that's fun. That's super fun. So Amanda's sun is at 20 degrees of Libra, meaning her birthday was literally just the other day. Or today, depending on time zone, or yesterday, depending on time zone. Up in the ninth house. Anyway, so we first have to talk about the Aquarius Ascendant, which is a carryover from yesterday's charts, the last charts that we did. So Aquarius is that fixed air sign, brings a lot of intellect, brings a lot of genius into the chart, brings a lot of really fun, just mental energy. Some people interpret that as crazy. Other people interpret that as, you know, the inspiration and the genius of the gods. It's relative. Haters gonna hate, Amanda. That's kind of what I have to say about Aquarius. If they don't get it, then they don't deserve to be in your life. That's what I have to say about that. That's what I kind of tell all my Aquarius friends. Triple air sign. Wow. Like, seriously, you've got, although the ascendant is separating from all of it, you've still got 21 degree Gemini moon and a 20 degree Gemini sun, 24 degree Aquarius ascendant. All 3 of your personal places. Excuse me. Water down the wrong pipe. All 3 of your personal placements with ascendant, sun, and moon are all in air signs, which really does make you a very airy individual. And I enjoy that. I think that can be super fun. Having so much air in your chart, we do need to understand that element's kind of proclivities, its mastery, but also where it tends to falter. I mean, you've also got this really nice Gemini and Libra, although Gemini and Libra isn't necessarily its favorite sign. It is an air sign, and Gemini does appreciate the air signs more so than the others, because it's just, you know, air is free, air is intellect, Mercury is the planet of the mind. There's a little bit more synergy and synastry there. So we've got so much of that element of communication, the element of words, the element of speaking, the element of being inspired, the element of, in some cases, teaching and writing, anything that has to deal with the word, the transmission of ideas. That's where you're going to find a lot of your strengths. You've also decided to put your sun in the ninth house of higher education as well as your Mercury, so it wouldn't surprise me if higher levels of schooling are definitely part of what you've chosen to kind of invest your time and your money into as well. Although we also have children, which is a really big passion for you. The ruler of the chart is also Saturn in Leo at 15 degrees in the 7th house of relationships. That is a little bit tricky, I'm not going to lie. Having Saturn in Leo, it's a fun placement, because Saturn as Lord of Restriction doesn't really do well in the gaudy, glitzy, glammy sign of Leo. Saturn prefers to be to have his actions speak for himself. Whereas Leo tends to just like to be the star of the party. You know, Leo is the is that it? John Lennon? I think that might be the right. Yeah, John Lennon. Of the zodiac, you know, to look at my rings, look at my big capes and glitz and glam and headpieces and all that jazz. And Saturn doesn't really do that per se. So it's a little bit of an energetic discord there in the 7th house of relationships that doesn't stop you from viewing relationships as an extremely important part of your personal life and your dynamic. I do like that the sun in Libra is ruling that Saturn and in mutual reception through the exaltation sign of Libra. That might mediate it just a little bit. And I can see how the relationships and the children and the secondary, the higher education are kind of coming forward in the chart now as well. There's a lot of creativity and synergy and relationships that are happening throughout the chart, which I really, really appreciate. They're being a little bit skimpy about the specifics. The chart's not necessarily coughing up as much as I would like it to, but I think it's because it's really kind of pulling me into this 10th house, where we need to talk about some of your, just a little bit of your nonsense, my dear. So here in this 10th house of fame, of business success, of being seen, okay, we have Mars in Scorpio, we have North Node Scorpio, we have Uranus in Scorpio, and we have Venus in Scorpio. And this is a little bit tricky because I think I talked about this during the last live stream as well. When we have the 10th house as the house of fame, ruled by Scorpio, the sign of secrets, it does create a very different energetic dynamic than I'm personally kind of used to seeing. We would want something like Leo, maybe even Aquarius. We would want something like Gemini. We would want maybe Virgo or Capricorn on that 10th house. Maybe even Sagittarius, but Scorpio, who prefers to hide in the shadows, who prefers to be kind of gothically surrounded by things that are cloaked and blacked out and kind of literally coated in eyeshadow. It's the idea of the first impression not being the first impression. And us looking at this 10th house of success, which has Mars, has Venus, has Uranus, has the North Node. Like, you're here to learn and decode the idea of fame, but then also to understand how you can be famous for often your particular style, your particular tribe, the type of fame that you would enjoy and not necessarily everybody else's fame, a more secretive, a more niche fame to your individual interests and groups. This is also what we see with Venus and Scorpio, interestingly enough. Venus and Scorpio is in her fall. She doesn't really like to be in Scorpio. So one of the things that will happen as you start to explore your personal power, your success, your fame, is there will be an increased rearing of this victim mentality, of this woe is me, of this kind of powerless side, this powerless Venus coming forward, saying, you know, but I'm sacrificing so much to do this? Is it actually worth it? And honestly, if I had to answer that question based on your chart, I would say the answer is no. You have so much more strength in your chart in the intellectual fields. You have so much more strength in your chart, even in the fifth house of creativity and sexuality and children and parenting. The ruler of your chart even is Saturn in the seventh of relationships. Like, these are the areas that you should be focusing on, not necessarily acquiring fame. Although it is something that you'll naturally start to learn throughout the life, you'll naturally accrue success, because that's what happens when you get good at what you do, right? You study, you learn, you advance, but it's not something you can really pursue. You can say yes to it, yeah, but often true acknowledgement is given by those who recognize your value, not necessarily you pursuing it yourself. We would need to be just a little bit careful with friendship dynamics. Friendship dynamics tend to be a little bit wild, a little bit too unpredictable. I wouldn't necessarily rely on friendships too much. They're great mold breakers. They're great to kind of shake things up, but you already have a lot of kind of shaking up in the chart. You already have a lot of air energy. You don't necessarily need somebody to kind of douse you with napalm and kind of set you ablaze. You already have a lot of that airy circulation that's happening in the chart. So just be aware that friends can be a little bit more seductive, a little bit more kind of egging on, a little bit more of a positively toxic influence. Best of intentions, but not necessarily the best results, despite those intentions. Okay. I think that is all your chart has for me to interpret, my dear. Thank you so much for giving me your chart to feature in the live stream. It is very, very much appreciated. Let's just make sure we've got, we've got comments. So glad that everybody is liking it. Thank you so much. Excellent. Just making sure that, yep, perfect. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, let's go on to chart number 2. Chart number 2 is Mia. Let's take a peek at Mia. Okay. Mia, my darling. Let's see. So we have North Node, Neptune, and Ascendant all in the first house of self. Where is Jupiter, the Lord of the chart? In Aries. Okay. In the fifth house of creativity. Oh, that Mars Venus square. Interesting. Moon gem, Saturn misplaced in Cancer. Sun in Aries, exalted Sun in Aries. That's nice. I'll take that. Okay, let's break it down. So when it comes to the North Node being in the first house, and this is based on whole sign houses, so if you've run your chart in Placidus, what I found when studying traditional astrology in my 15 years now of kind of going from modern astrology to traditional, is that whole sign houses tend to be far more accurate. So although this would naturally be, oh, and good morning, by the way, just so you know, my dear Mia, a blue jay has literally just landed on the hibiscus bush outside of my window, so that spirit definitely maybe something to work with, has a message for you. So when it comes to whole sign houses, we're using a 0 degree start point as opposed to the ascendant chart, the ascendant start point in Placidus. So if you're not used to that, this is just how I read. So that puts the North Node at 1 degree Sag in the first house. And the way that we would interpret that is, your goal here is to develop a personality. Your goal here is to learn the mysteries of the body. Your goal here is to really dive deep into the lessons of self. What does it mean to be you? Who are you? And what skills, what talents, what vital forces have you decided to bless the world with this go around? We do have Neptune in Sagittarius, which I kind of alluded to in the previous chart. Neptune and Sagittarius is an interesting combination because Neptune is notorious for making things rather confusing, and it does so in a particular way. Neptune, whenever I focus on it, and whenever transits that heavily involve Neptune come forward, or when it's placed in important parts of the chart, it always reminds me of the fairy realm. It always reminds me of that place that is beautiful, but it is also delirious, and you don't remember it after you've been there, and you could stay there for years or decades or centuries and not know it, and it just skews all forms of reality. In the sign of Sagittarius, who is naturally known as the seeker, who is naturally going to be the eternal optimist, who is naturally going to be the sign that is constantly searching for the Holy Grail. Yeah, this is a planetary placement that is prone to toxic positivity. And what I mean by that is, all the love and light and well wishes in the world cannot sugarcoat the truth of the matter when self-development is truly at hand. And although it's nice to manifest your desires, it's nice to hold on to positive affirmation, it's nice to feel good on a regular basis, life is not necessarily all about feeling good. And in fact, those times where we don't feel good can be very clarifying, but if we don't lean into that pain, if we don't feel it completely, then we don't achieve the clarity that we need to kind of level up in our experience. So escapist tendencies are kind of what I'll see with that Neptune in Sagittarius retrograde. So we do have a very strong we do have a very strong flair for that Sag energy. And then that exalted sun, that's some pretty strong fire. That's some pretty strong fire that you're cooking with, my dear. Sag Ascendant at 20 degrees. It's not applying, but it is still by sign very, very fiery and combustive. The Lord of the chart is also in Aries as well. Jupiter in Aries in the 5th. So putting Jupiter, the Sun, and Mercury all in Aries in the 5th house does really emphasize the 5th house of creativity, sexuality, children, and parenting. It really does draw a lot of focus into that life, especially because you've put your sun in his exalted sign of Aries, his favorite sign to be in. It really is a very powerful choice, and you could actually be a very powerful parent should you choose. You would be an excellent leader. You would be, and here is Blue Jay coming back for you, my dear, as we speak about your 5th house of children and leadership and your exalted sun in that space. So there's a lot of beautiful messages here, I think, that the 5th house can offer, tapping into your creativity, really letting your mind, letting your creative juices come to the forefront of your reality, not just metaphysically in terms of kind of working with your muses and your creative process, but also physically in terms of raising children, raising the next generation, really tapping into your parenting skills and allowing that fiery part of your chart to be both internally and externally creative. So we do have the moon at 28 degrees of Gemini in the 7th house. Venus is in Gemini in the 7th house, but she's squaring that Mars. She's squaring that Mars. Here's the rub. Here's the rub about holding down a household. Here's the rub about holding down a household is, you have so much fire and you have so much air in your chart, but the one element that you're really lacking is earth. And where I'd really like to see that earth is in the 4th house of family and home, but alas, it is not present. So we're going to have a little bit of an issue creating things like schedules and cultivating groundedness and making sure that we follow routine. Because when you want to develop a family, when you want to develop a stable relationship, when you want to develop a certain amount of predictability, because that really comes in handy when you're trying to build a life, is knowing what's happening the next day, the next week, the next month, etc., as opposed to flying by the seat of your pants. When you're younger, that Venus in Gemini is all about flying by the seat of her pants. She's like, woo, I don't need a seatbelt for this roller coaster. I can ride it on my own. Yeah, that's not necessarily sustainable for raising children and having a family. So we need to understand that the airiness of the chart, the mutability of the chart, although it can be fun, although it can be windy, although it can be creative, although it can be whimsical, right? At some point, we're going to need to make a decision. At some point, we're going to need to set rules, boundaries, guidelines. And we don't need to set them angrily. We don't need to make this about ego or power. We just need to let this be the law of the land so that everybody is able to prosper, because if we don't have a channel, yeah, if we don't have a focus in this journey we call life, then people are going to veer and people are going to make up their own rules. And if you decide what the law of the land is before, then you at least know what you're dealing with. Yeah, we just really need to get some really strong earth tendencies in your chart. If there was one kind of medicinal thing that I would really recommend for your chart, it would be working on your earth element. It would be really focusing on the idea of grounding on a regular basis, being in nature. It would be even carrying rock, stones, crystals with you. It would be working on your physical mineral content, your vitamin content, anything that has to do with like literal earth or groundedness, internal earth groundedness, steadiness, really sticking to a tight schedule, making sure that routine is something that you can rely on a regular basis. I'm not sure if the family is ever really going to approve of the choice of relationships that you have. That's not necessarily their business. Unless they want to see the kids, then they're going to have to deal with it at some point. They'll love the children, they just won't necessarily love the spouse. Money stuff is going to be a little bit tricky. In fact, in your chart, the idea of being taken advantage of, especially through taxes, through states, through banks or dealerships, or anybody who lords money over you, other people's money, kind of institutions of money, of investment. The idea that you would potentially lose money if those aren't watched carefully. We would really need to make sure that you have an accountant that you can trust, somebody that really understands what it is to watch over your finance, not necessarily kind of play with it or try to grow it, but again, really make sure that they are a trusted source for financial gain for you, because that Saturn in fall ruling your financial house, sitting in the 8th house of taxes and estates, that's pretty rough. Let's see. Yeah, I think if you just leverage your creativity, if you start to continue to develop your personality, really charge forward and really make sure that you understand who you are, cultivating your identity, and allowing that to flow not just through yourself, but also into others, into the next generation. That's really kind of the focus of your chart for sure. Excellent. Thank you, Mia. I appreciate you donating your chart. Let's go ahead and just check the comments real quick. Hi, Blue Jay. Well, my family has never approved of my relationships. Yeah, that's the bullshit when you have a Venus-Mars square between the 4th house of family and the 7th house of relationships. It's just, they don't get it. They'll love the kids. They'll love the kids to death. And that's actually how you repair the relationship between the spouse and your family, is them seeing what a great parent they are and the next generation that they are capable of bringing forward. However, it's not really their job to approve. It's your life, but I'm kind of the last person to ask about family approval. Anyway, okie dokie, let's go ahead and move on to our next chart. Running just a little bit behind everybody, so I'm going to have to speed these charts up a tad. Alex, let's talk about you. Okay. 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 Interesting, Alex. Interesting. Oh. Okay. So, very, very dynamic chart here. We have a 1-degree ascendant in Taurus. This is where you get your groundedness. This is where you get your love of routine. This is where you get, in some ways, your stubbornness, your love of doing things efficiently, but with the minimal amount of energy required. Pisses some people off to no end. I personally very much appreciate that. Everybody's different. You also have your moon in Taurus, which is an exalted moon. The moon, her favorite sign is Taurus. So for you to put the moon in Taurus in the first house of self, it really does bring forward this lovely, big, open heart of yours. And I very much enjoy that. One thing that it does tend to do, from a medical astrology standpoint, is the moon will bring sensitivity and potentially swelling and fluid wherever she is placed. And for her to be in the first house of the body in the sign of Taurus, which rules the metabolism as well as the ligaments and the neck. I see this a lot in people who struggle with their weight, people who struggle with their metabolism, people who struggle with body image, especially earlier in life as they start to understand that, hey, you're just built a little bit thicker, you're built a little bit stockier, you know, you literally have that bull, that Taurus energy that's coming forward. So it's not necessarily about you winning every beauty contest. It's about health. It's about wellness. It's about mastering your body type and understanding what it means to be too skinny, what it means to be too big, and finding the balance that's perfect for you in between those two extremes. Nobody should tell you what your ideal weight should be, but it should feel good to you. And it will fluctuate rather heavily because that moon is often tied to your emotions. And if you, I say if, but I know you already seek emotional comfort in food, then that can often contribute to the issue. So just mastering that moon in Taurus, it's a beautiful sign, it's a lovely sign, it's a compassionate sign. It makes you so trusting and trustworthy. Yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't understand about moon in Taurus, is they are literally the most worthy of trust. Yeah. And that I think is a beautiful thing. But it does also come forward with some pretty intense medical issues. Okay. Down here in the 4th house of family, we do have the ruler of the chart, Our Lady Venus, who is in Leo, ruled by the sun in Leo, who's in the 4th house. You know, you really stuck it out, Alex. Like, you were so determined to be a Leo. I must be a Leo. So funny because you're at 0 degrees of that sun. We also have Mercury and Leo here in the 4th house. This really does put a very high emphasis on family for you. Family is extremely important, and it's actually very loving and supportive. I really enjoy this family dynamic placement. They're a little bit loud. They're a little bit dramatic. They are definitely the Leo archetype, you know. But at the same time, they're genuine. And having Venus here as well, having Mercury here as well, they're not just for show. They also have the heart behind it. They also have the mind behind it, which is rare when you see that kind of over-dramatic glitz and glam, is to have the intelligence behind the creativity. the outward expression of the creativity. So I think that that's a beautiful environment, and when in doubt, I really would retreat into the home and relative space, because I think that that's an absolute strength for you. Now, relationships are a little bit tricky. First and foremost, you've put Scorpio on the cusp of your 7th house of relationships, so you're naturally looking for the person that everybody would disapprove of. You're looking for the Gothic archetype. You're looking for somebody who naturally will hold secrets, somebody who's a little bit sensitive, a lot bit sensitive. You're looking for somebody who is naturally going to be prone to a little bit of breakage or damage internally. You're looking for somebody who's going to be fiercely loyal, but somebody who also is emotionally intelligent. But somebody who is also a little bit rough around the edges, somewhat poisonous, because of Scorpio. Having Mars and Scorpio in the 7th is a really prominent placement. You've also put Saturn here. Both are malefics. So they're not the easiest planets to deal with in the 7th house of relationships, which is what will make relationships just a little bit difficult. These are both very domineering planets as well, and I think if you understand that the person that you're drawn to has their secrets and will keep their secrets, and you need to be okay with that, then by all means go for it. But if you resent them for the shadows that they have within themselves, then you're just always going to resent them, because that's something that Scorpio just has. It's branded. They keep things really close to the vest, and that's just who they are. So it will be problematic. It will also be problematic for your family to see that. They might also be the ones to bring those secrets to your attention because they love you. But it doesn't necessarily help the situation. At its best, a Mars in Scorpio in the 7th house is somebody who is a leader, somebody who is fierce, but also very intuitive, very emotionally sensitive, and somebody who really calculates every move that they make, and puts great energy and precision to their movements, which is something that you can appreciate. Okay. Now we do have an issue with school. I'm not talking about primary school. I'm talking about college, and secondary education and advanced learnings. Jupiter and Capricorn here in the 9th house of spirituality, foreigners, higher education, travel. These are things that are actually going to be really difficult for you. We have Jupiter, Lord of Abundance, in the sign of his detriment, Capricorn, and also retrograde. This is just absolute nonsense. If you are currently going to school right now, I pity you, because of all of the Capricorn stuff just hitting that house for you right now. There's so much in that space that's just really, really heavy and oppressive. So that's not going to be the easiest space for you to navigate. Again, you can always run home to family. You can always focus on the easier forms of learning, your own creativity, your own writing, speaking, teaching. But when it comes to being too book smart, when it comes to being too elitist, too well-traveled, when it comes to leaving your home, your roots, which are so strong, that's really when you're going to surrender to a lot of weakness. And we don't want that for you. You are kind of here to master money, wealth, and self-confidence. The idea of you being wealthy, you owning your own wealth, you understanding how money works. Those are all aspects that I think you will need to, that will constantly be coming up for you. It's just the idea, how much am I worth? What is the bottom line? How do I work with this thing called money? Does money actually represent my own value? That whole kind of existential dialogue. Wonderful. Cool, Alex. That's a summary of your chart. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for donating your chart to the live stream. Okay, no more new comments. Let's go ahead and we'll, whoop, that's my email. Just kidding. We need to go to chart 4, which is Ryan. And let's pull back my face. Cool. Ryan, how are you? Cheers. We have that same Sagittarius Ascendant, Neptune Sagittarius. So having Sagittarius on the Ascendant really does give you a blast of that fire energy. It really does give you a blast of that curiosity, that seeker energy. You know, you're constantly looking for the silver lining. You're always off on another adventure, trying to save the damsel in distress or find the Holy Grail. You know, that's the fool of Sagittarius. Always looking for the next thing to be inspired by. Neptune in Sagittarius does bring a little bit of the escapism, though, which can be somewhat toxic. So being aware that although it can be helpful and fun to keep going on these adventures, you can also at some point just be running for the sake of running, and just be looking for the sake of looking and not necessarily being productive, and that can be somewhat harmful to your life experience and to your chart. So that's something that we just kind of need to be aware of. The ruler of your chart is Jupiter in Virgo, retrograde, co-present with a lot of retrograde planets, co-present with Mars, co-present with the MC, co-present with Saturn, all retrograde in Virgo in the 10th. You know, you desire to be seen, you desire to have the success, but at the same time, success builds slowly in your chart. It's not something that is immediately present, and often that success will be delivered to you by family. And it will be delivered to you by your investments in your home, not necessarily by traditional forms of work. So that's something to just kind of keep an eye on. Is it's for you, it's not necessarily about working hard. It's about investing, and it's about knowing who, what, and why you are investing in these things. Time is an investment. Energy is an investment. Money is an investment. But work equals paycheck equals success. Not necessarily going to be the straight route that it is, and instead it would be much easier for you to take the real estate route, and or lean on family for finances. But family, you know, family is an interesting bag in and of itself, because we have the sun in Pisces, so there is an identification with the family. There is an ego relationship to the family, and a connection there. But the Mercury in Pisces really does bring a clouded mind, and an inspired mind, right? But a mind that can be a little bit wishy-washy, a mind that can be rather unfocused, a mind that can be prone to distraction and delay, and that was very present in the home growing up, and you know, you kind of learned that from them. It was stamped on you. So one of the things that I might recommend from a mental remediation standpoint, and in some ways from a family remediation standpoint and success in general, is for you to surround yourself with new media, books on tape. I say books on tape, look, I'm dating, but like audiobooks, anything that TED Talks, you know, anything that's inspirational, anything that's going to shift your mental state, anything that's going to teach you how to be a little bit more hyper-focused, anything that's going to clarify the mind and not necessarily just allow it to be this thing that flounders and spits out an idea every once in a while, and that you're kind of a slave to. Yeah, we want to get the mind to to be trained in a different way, and to not necessarily be retreating into the default of that wishy-washy Pisces energy. Let's see. There was potentially a lot of movement growing up. And in fact, that's actually one of the things that you're actually really focused on, is developing and growing in that ninth house of movement, of travel, foreigners, higher education, spirituality even, just kind of growing and expanding your horizons, seeing what else is out there. I really like that for you. But remember that it's not just about you growing, it's also about you rewriting those old patterns so that you can grow. Yeah. Interesting choice in the parenting department and the creativity department. Moon in Aries, Venus in Aries. Both the feminine sisters of the zodiac and of the planets and their placements. But Aries is the fiery masculine leadership sign. It's a sign that is heated. It's a sign that is focused. It's a sign that wants to charge forward and do, whereas the moon prefers to reflect and Venus prefers to attract. Yeah. Having both of your yin planets, your rest, your relaxation, your take it easy planets in that fiery sign of Aries in the 5th house of creativity, I would really encourage you to cultivate a little bit more softness, a little bit more receptivity, a little bit more of your listening skills, your meditative skills in the creative department. Sometimes we talk too much, even in our own heads. Yeah. Sometimes we are emotionally too focused on the next thing. Yeah. When really creativity comes when we are still, when we are asking for sure, asking for that next bolt of inspiration. But we are also able to receive it. And unfortunately, a moon in Aries, Venus in Aries combo doesn't necessarily receive too well. So working on that receptivity is definitely something that I would encourage. Which will also help you with work. For sure, because that's something that they've told you time and time again, is listening. Listening. Because if you don't listen, you don't hear. And if you don't hear, then you can't act appropriately. And that's the issue with Venus and Aries, is she thinks she knows it all. And she says, prove it to me. And that doesn't really go well with you being somebody who's doing a job for another person, right? I like your entrepreneurship tendencies, though. Wouldn't surprise me if you had a little side hustle, a little side business. I'd like that for you. I would like that for you, actually. And overall, just give success time. Relationships will be just a little bit difficult. Again, back to that Mercury in Pisces, there's a lack of defined boundaries. There's a lack of proper communication. You know, when you're in a relationship and you're supposed to be relying on your intuition the whole time, like, that's to a certain degree fun, like especially when you're first starting out and you're kind of anticipating or guessing each other's movements. But when it comes to practical things like making big decisions, you can't just rely on intuition anymore. And that's when the relationship kind of falls apart, is when you're no longer kind of in that honeymoon phase of your energies bonding and your kind of in lockstep. When you separate as people and you ask yourselves, you know, how can we continue to move this relationship forward? That Mercury in Pisces really starts to confuse and muddle things. So we want to make sure that communication is enhanced in relationships. that excuse me, that boundaries are enhanced in relationships, that the idea of not mentally flying by the seat of your pants, knowing what your partner is thinking and why, because they have told you, and because you have also told them that you're interested in hearing what they're thinking and feeling, all those things. Like Sun in Pisces, you naturally have a little bit of that intuition that creeps forward. But at the same time, we need to be aware that that's not necessarily practical for big decisions. Although it is, when it comes to family, family will often introduce you or have the best ability to pick out the ideal spouse for you. So if you wanted to get a little bit closer to finding the ideal partner, or, at least better relationships, have your friends, family, and extended family kind of introduce you to people in their circles, because they'll know who would be best for you, where you might necessarily not. I think that's pretty much about it, darling. Cool. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you letting me look at your chart and put you on blast a little bit on social media. I think we got another comment. Spot on, holy cow, blown away. Good, Alex. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. Yeah, health weight issues. It just absolutely sucks. Like, I know because I have Moon, Sun, Jupiter, and Cancer, which is another kind of stomach weight thing, and I am right there with you. I am right there with you, and nobody really understands what it means to struggle with weight unless they have really big Moon or Taurus placements. So I feel you. It is a lifelong journey. It is something that you do need to tackle on a regular basis. But I'm so glad that the reading was able to clarify. Okay, we've got one more chart to do before we wrap up. So let's go ahead and pull up our final chart. If my mouse will be cooperative. And we'll just double click it. Alyssa. Cheers, my darling. How are you? Another Sun in Libra. Happy belated. Let's see. That Ascendant in Leo. North Node Leo, Venus Leo. Okay. Oh, an exalted Saturn. That's fun. A little bit combust, but we can work with that, I guess. Mars in Scorpio. Moon in Gemini in the 11th. With Mercury and Libra in the 3rd. Okay. Okay. We can work with that. Let's take a peek. So, my dear, we have that Leo energy in the chart with the Ascendant. Although you are technically a Libra with a Gemini moon and your rising is Leo, it still means that you have a strong Leo flair to you. This is where you get a little bit of your drama, a little bit of your glitz, your glam, your need for attention, but also your performance art, your ability to spot talent, and your appreciation of those who are talented. North Node in Leo and Venus in Leo does really speak towards you needing to build a persona, and Venus is the exact planet that you need to help do that for you. I love it for you. I think it's super fun. I think it's just a lovely placement. Venus is known for bringing beauty and attraction. There's just a lot of glorious things that a Venus in the first house will do for you when you put the North Node here. The North Node is that point of striving throughout the life. It's kind of the north of your personal compass. Like, you're here to do that thing. And the first house is all about the self, the body, developing an identity. And Venus is all about that, especially in Leo. She is, whenever I think of Venus and Leo, I always think of just the really, really big-haired, big-boobed, big butt, big lipstick, gaudy jewelry, leopard print Jersey girls. Like that's who I think of when I think of Venus and Leo. Just, you don't miss her for a second. You smell her before you see her. Like, it's all about engaging all of the senses with who you are as a person. And image being important, but also body being important. And all of these things that Venus would be happy to help you with. Okay. Let's see. The ruler of your chart is Sun in Libra in the third house of writing, teaching, communication, where you've got a lot of strength, my darling. Lot of strength, a fierce strength. Like, ooh, goodness, the strength. Crazy levels of strength. Because you've exalted your Saturn, which is difficult to do. Difficult to do, because Saturn moves slow as fuck. And you've really, really nailed it, because Saturn's at 0 degrees, just transitioned into Libra. Not only that, but you have the Sun in Libra in mutual reception with Venus and Leo. They've traded signs, so that's a really great connection. So if you're not a writer, a teacher, or speaker, I would highly suggest you do those things. Like, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but you've probably been a teacher your entire life. Like, you've probably entranced people with your words. You've stacked up piles of journals already, because there's no mistaking this in your chart. Saturn is also ruling your 6th house of work from your 3rd house of writing, teaching, communication. Your Mercury is here, the planet of the mind. Like, there's so much of you that is the archetype of the teacher. It's just absolutely crazy. Gemini moon in the 11th is a random placement, but I like it. I like it because Gemini is a very charismatic... Excuse me. Goodness. Gemini is a very charismatic sign. And Gemini being a very charismatic sign in the 11th house of friendship, social groups, tribes. Like, there's so much that's right about that. And you've put your moon here. So one of the ways that you're going to recharge is actually through social engagement. The more you surround yourself with a big old crowd of people, big old crowd of friends, big old crowd of peers, it's just going to be very nourishing to your spirit. So just kind of keep that in mind, tucked away. Because that's going to be how we access your moon, your emotional wellness. Yeah, there's lots of family secrets, and you could unpack those. You could, if you really wanted to. They never really liked your style, but that's not your problem, that's theirs. Their secrets often got them in a lot of trouble. And I'm not here to kind of condemn them, and I'm not here to ask you to kind of forgive them, but what I am saying is that at some point you're going to have to recognize the conflict between who you are and who they wanted you to be, and heal that, whatever that means. That doesn't necessarily mean keeping them in your life. That doesn't necessarily mean having anything to do with them. That doesn't mean asking for an apology or giving an apology. What that does mean is just recognizing that you will not be able to embrace the fullness of who you are until you let go of the expectations that they tried to place on you. So there's that. One of the things that I do think they are right about, though, is that you do need to get out and see the world. You do need to grow spiritually. You do need to be involved in higher education. you are somebody who would actually do very well in that field, and they might actually have the connections to give you that experience specifically. Um, yeah, I think if you ever need to like shape the Etch-a-Sketch, and if you ever wanted to bond with them, the best way to bond with them would be like over a trip, um, or taking their suggestion to go somewhere, because that's going to be a good way to exalt your chart actually. But yeah, it really comes back down to just you being a teacher, you recharging around other people. There's so much teacher energy in your chart. I can't get over it. Um, you're not really here to develop relationships. Although you might develop relationships with people who are in the same field as you just because they're in close proximity, they do what you do, you think the same, you're good partners. Yeah, but you're not necessarily here to focus on like finding your soulmate. Um, Jupiter in Virgo, that's a little bit tricky for financial situations. Lord of Abundance in his fall of Virgo, not really too thrilled with it. So we might need somebody else to look after finances. But I think that's pretty much about it. Cool. Excellent, my dear. Thank you so much for donating your charts to the live stream. I very, very much appreciate it. Let's just go check the comments one more time. Doesn't look like there are any more fresh comments. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining me for the live stream. It's been a pleasure, as always. We will be back on Monday to do the same thing, 5 more charts. If you would like to book a private session with me, or if you would like to learn astrology, you can always go to my website, scorpiorisingastrology.com. In the meantime, may the stars be ever in your favor.